My name's Alan Boyd. I live in Coleraine at the minute. I come from Glasgow originally. The main influence in my life when he was there was my father. He was a very strict disciplinarian. He had been in the army. He was in the TA. He was involved in the Freemasons and a long distance lorry driver. That was why he was very rarely there. And I stole from my mum and my dad just to have money in my pocket. And if I ever found out it was a punch I got, he'd take me upstairs and it was a man-to-man fight, even though I was only a youngster. I ended up getting involved with gangs at a very early age. From about 9 years of age I was involved in. And then when you get in, you were asked, did you really want to be involved in it? And how much were you willing to sacrifice for the gang and other members of the gang? And if you answered right, you get put through initiation. You could either fight with some of the fellas in the gang and take a beating, or you could get stabbed. I chose to get stabbed because it would be over quicker. And I got to about 12 or 13 and I really felt unloved in the family. I didn't feel that anybody really wanted me there. I was an outsider. I was the only boy in the family and I just felt a heaviness and a depression. When I got to 14, I actually tried to commit suicide. I went up into, it was a swing that we had, it was in the local area, and I put it round my neck and I started swinging, and it was one of my friends that come along and I actually cut it down when my face was going blue. The marks on my neck, I actually told my parents that I'd run into a wire fence. So I joined the army and I went through the training, which was enjoyable but hard. A lot of ones were coming in and thinking it was easy and they jacked it in within a couple of weeks. Folk were relying on you. Rather than you relying on yourself, you had to rely on other people and they had to rely on you. And that built up a bond. That was good. I got posted to Germany at the first, and that was just a life of Riley. You could relax. There wasn't very many duties to do. The main thing we done was drink, and I became addicted to alcohol while I was in the army. Then we got posted to Hong Kong. That was something similar. And then I get posted to Northern Ireland for a tour over here for 2 years. It's while we were there that I get involved in something that was a bit distasteful. At this minute in time, I can look back on it and realise the big mistake I made in my life. We went to Kelly's one night, and at the end of the night, we were standing waiting in a taxi, and a group of fellas from Bushmills come up and started arguing and shouting and just been general a pain. And the next thing I knew, we were fighting. There was a group of them and me and my girlfriend at the time, she's now my wife. A few of my friends seen what was happening and come down and joined in. And before we knew it, there was a fight going on and one of the boys got killed. One of the other fellas that came down was carrying a knife. The fella that got killed had been actually on the ground, and the other fella come up and stabbed him while he was lying there. Me and the fella that got accused of the murder and actually got jailed for it, he decided we'd escape one night from the army jail. So we broke out the army jail and we walked to Coleraine again. And after that we get remanded into custody in the Crumlin Road, and we get put onto A wing, which is the remand wing. We were put onto the 3rd floor, which was protection, because we were soldiers and there was terrorists in the wing, and they didn't want, for our own safety, that we didn't go into the landing with them. And it was while we were in there, there was only 2 years in the cell to begin with, and then we get told that there'd be somebody else moving in with us. So they stuck in another bed, and this fella came in called Noel Brown. He came in and we didn't know him, we'd never met him before, and when he came into the cell he was carrying a Bible, and this is the first time I'd seen him sort of carrying one. And he came in and he sat in his bed and he'd have read it at night and he'd have said prayers, and we just thought he was weird. We just kept ourselves to ourselves, and after a while we got friendly with him, and he explained to us why he was reading and why he prayed. He'd been born again, he'd get saved while he was in jail. He petrol bombed his own house to try and get out of the UVF. He was involved in the paramilitaries, but unbeknownst to him, his wife and kid were in the house, and when the house went up, they died. So that's why he got done for murder. And after a while, it started to get monotonous. You weren't seeing MD, you weren't speaking to MD. And Noel was getting out every Thursday night and he was getting out every Sunday. And I started to wonder, look, where's he going? How's he getting out of the cell? Because he was on protection as well, because he wanted out of the paramilitaries. And when he came in one day, I says, how are you getting out? No, how do you manage to get the extra hour out of the cell on the Sunday? And he says, I go to church. He says, why don't you come along? And I thought, well, it gets me out of the cell for an hour. There was 2 or 3 that had been born again that get saved, and they were there to hear what the minister had to say about the Bible. The rest of us were just there to get out of the cells. And this one Thursday night, the minister decided he would let somebody else take the meeting. And he says, right, who's going to bring it? Nobody said a word. And I thought, well, if somebody doesn't say something, look, we're not going to have the meeting. He's going to cancel it and we'll be locked up again. So I stuck my hand up, not knowing what I'd volunteered for. And in the army they always told you never volunteer for anything. So I stuck my hand up and he says, right, Alan will take it next week. And I thought, this is great. So I went back into the cell and I said to Noel Brown, I says, right, what do you do? He says, well, you read your Bible, and he says, if there's something sticks out at you, you speak on it. And I says, well, I don't have a Bible. He says, here, you can have mine, and he passed me his New Testament. He says, read that. And I looked at it and thought, well, how am I going to read all of that in a week? Because I was never great at reading. So he says, no, just open it up somewhere and read it. He says, and if something sticks out at you, he says, you speak on that. So I opened it up, and it opened up at John. And I started reading through, and I got to John 3. And when it came to verse 16, it just stuck out like a sore thumb. For God so loved the world. And this is the first time I'd ever held a Bible. And people look at you now and think, nah, that's you're just saying that because that's a well-known scripture. But I'd never seen it. I'd never held a Bible in my life. And it opened up in John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. And I thought, I can talk on that. That's no problem. I can talk. I might not be able to good at anything else, but I can talk. So I thought, well, that's okay. We'll be out for a couple of hours. I'll just keep talking and talking and talking and not let him finish. And I walked in and we sang a few hymns. And the minister turned around and says, right, Alan's going to bring us a word now. And I sat down and I got all nervous. And I started, right, for God so loved the world that gave his only begotten Son. And that's as far as I got. I broke into tears. And I hadn't a clue what came over me. I just felt this heaviness coming on me every time I read it. This happened 3 times. And I thought, I'm going to get a pasting when I go out on an exercise yard tomorrow. These guys are hard men. So I went to bed that night and I tossed and turned. Couldn't get to sleep at all. So I sat up and I was just sitting thinking to myself. And Noel was awake as well. And he turned around and says, you need to get saved. And I says, what do you mean saved? They says, you have to give your life to God. So I says, right, fair enough. How do you do it? He says, all you need to do is get down beside your bed. Just tell God you're sorry for all the things you've done wrong. And ask him to come into your life. And I said to Noel, right, I'm going to do it. So I get down beside of my bed. And I committed my life to God there and then. And it was as if a heaviness had just been lifted off my back. Look, it's just hard to explain. There was such a weight on my shoulders through my life of sin, that when God took it away, when he forgave me, like he just took it off, and it was just like somebody lifting a weight off my back. And I felt great. And then when Chris came in, I told him what I'd done, and he said he wanted to do the same. So he knelt down and he prayed as well. After that, my life just went on leaps and bounds. Things started happening for me. Like I got a job. Like God just blessed me. I got my second son was born in England. That was a blessing. He was such a joy. I made such friends in the church that I didn't know people could love you that way without expecting something back. It was a love that they just gave. They just showed love. And I think that's what encouraged me in the faith. And no matter how bad you think you are, or how bad you've been, God still loves you. And his love's forever lasting. No, he forgives you. He forgets what you've done. The hardest part is forgetting it yourself. Just surrender your life to Christ and you'll realise just exactly what you can do.